what makes you the most proud, looking back? Because you're really at this turning point in your life now where it's not only the close of a chapter, it's really the beginning of the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So what makes you the most proud?
Being able to write our own story and to, I'm very much, if you haven't noticed, I'm like very much in the present. So the present moment is like my proudest moment.
I'm Allison Hagendorf. America, this is the next. Hello, Times Square. Welcome to X Games Aspen. I'm Allison Hagendorf. I'm the live announcer of the VMAs. Welcome to Rock This with Allison Hagendorf.
Yeah, this is Allison Hagendorf.
Hello, my fellow music lovers, and welcome to the Allison Hagendorf Show. Hello, my fellow music lovers, and welcome to the Allison Hagendorf Show. This is where we celebrate the universal love of music, the stories behind the songs, and the humans behind the artists. I'm so glad you're here. We are coming to you from DWP Studios in Los Angeles, and I want to give a shout out to our presenting sponsor, Cloudwater, which I love, and they help make this show possible along with you. Your support means the world to me. Thank you for watching, listening, and subscribing. I am truly excited for today's episode, sitting down with Deryck Whibley of Sum 41. This is a band I really came up with. We're the same age. In the late 90s, early 2000s, the pop punk scene was truly definitive of the time. Well, after 28 years as a band, selling over 15 million albums, Sum 41 recently released their final album, and Deryck has put out a memoir, an extremely personal, unfiltered, tell-all account of the traumas and triumphs of his life. Moving 19 times by the time he was 17, abuse he faced both at home and in the business, his catapult into fame, his relationships with Paris Hilton and Avril Lavigne, his addiction and rock bottom moments, how far he has come, and the lessons learned along the way. This is one you do not want to miss. We'll be right back with Deryck Whibley here in the studio. One thing about me is that I work hard and play hard, and this functionally fun box from Cloudwater helps me do that. These are my people. Listen to what it says inside. The world would be a better place if fun people lived forever. Yes, I subscribe to this. I feel seen. Inside, we have organic caffeine, we have daily defense, immunity, and CBD, which I imbibe every single afternoon. I think you'll enjoy this. Go to cloudwaterbrands.com, use my code Allison30 for 30% off, and let me know what you think. Cheers. My guest today is the frontman of the multi-platinum selling Canadian rock band Sum 41. In their nearly 30-year career, Sum 41 have firmly cemented their place in rock history with over 15 million records sold worldwide, multiple Billboard charting releases, a Grammy nomination, Juno Awards, and now the stories behind that journey, both the triumphs and the traumas, are being shared for the very first time in this book, Walking Disaster, written by Deryck Whibley himself. Deryck, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to sit here with you, and because while I was reading this book, which I read in about 3 days,
Wow.
I was messaging you throughout it,
Yeah.
and I was like, wow, wow, wow. And the reason why I'm saying so many wows is I think your story from day one, on is so unique. And to share it to this degree, this level of honesty and vulnerability, I really commend you.
Oh, thanks.
Because it speaks volumes about your character. What was sort of the impetus to do this, really this tell-all?
I think the idea of doing a book has come up over the years, maybe for the past 7 years. I've been approached and I've had meetings and thought about it. And I really just thought, to be honest, I always said no because I just thought, I don't know, it's kind of a boring story. what really is there? When I really thought about it, I'm like, I don't know, started a band in high school. We happened to make it. Okay, that's kind of cool. But lots of bands make it. So I didn't really think there was much there.
There's definitely nothing boring about your story or
well,
typical.
The thing is, I also read a lot of those, rock books, and I'm like, you read The Dirt or Tommy Lee's book or Ozzy Osbourne's book or Slash's book. I'm like, those are stories. I'm like, I got nothing on that. My story would be so boring. So I just always put it off. And the only reason I said yes to doing it now was because we were wrapping up the band and we are going to make a final album, final tour. And I thought, you know what? It's actually kind of makes sense to just wrap up this whole chapter of my life in one thing. Because it would feel weird to do a final album, final tour, and then in 10 years write a book about all I'd be like, let's just do it all at once and wrap it all up. And then I can just move on and everything is in the rear view.
Yeah. I love that. And you wrote this yourself.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that, the actual process, because a lot of people, they work with ghostwriters and they work with many people, but you really wrote this.
I did. So I'll be honest, I didn't start out thinking I was going to write it. I thought I was going to have a co-writer, like most people do.
Yeah.
And at first, when it first came up, I thought, okay, do I write this on my own? And I thought, I always do this. I always take on too much. I always think I can do this on my own. I don't need anybody else. And I'm just going to, and my life gets consumed with all this work. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to do what most people do, is I'm going to get a co-writer. And I took the meetings and we went down that path, and it just, we started that way. And as the process went on, the way it usually works is like you do all these interviews, and then that person takes your words and puts it onto paper, and you kind of read it back. So it is your words, but they're just doing the typing up work, right? And with their own flair on it, and they help, And I read it back, the first couple pages, and I go, this doesn't sound like me. Even though it's my story, my words. And we had a bit of butting heads. I said, hey, can we try to make it sound a little bit more like me? Here's some of the stuff that I've written. This is how I write.
Yeah. This is how I talk, too. Yeah.
This is the voice inside my head. This is the voice on paper for me.
Yeah.
And he was like, I don't do that.
Okay.
And I was like, well, I think we have a problem here.
Right. It wasn't a fit.
So it didn't work out. So now, once I made that switch where I was like, okay, I'm going to write this then, the publishers were like, well, you still have your deadlines. So we still need this handed in by this date. So I was like, okay. So I just started writing the book that day and didn't stop till it was done.
And I read it in the same manner. I don't, unfortunately, read that many books. I wish I would read more, but I read it so quickly. And I think what makes it so special, in addition to your story being so unique, it was I could hear you talking. I felt like we were sitting like this, and you were just sitting and sharing your story. And I think that's what makes it more powerful and resonates even more.
That's cool, because I was worried, because I'm not a writer. I've never written a book, that I'm like, I hope this doesn't seem just so plain. I did write it as if I was just telling the story.
Yeah, and that comes across. And I think because this story, which I want to start diving into, is so personal, that it was the perfect fit for it to be from you. It really shouldn't be in any other way. This isn't like an English essay. This is like...
Now that it's done, and I didn't know I was going to go into a lot of the stuff, because I didn't even really remember a lot of the stuff, just off top of mind. Obviously I remembered it, but it's not something that's just there, right? So as I was writing it, I'm like, oh yeah, there's this. I'm like, I didn't set out to talk about things. I didn't write it all out in point form, like, okay, I'm going to hit this moment, I'm going to talk about this. I just started writing. And as the times in my life approached, I'd be like, oh yeah, then there's this. I'm like, okay, I guess I got to go into that story.
Well, it's like self-therapy.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, because obviously, we all do bury trauma or just a lot of layers. And you can't believe that has been buried. But also, at the surface, it could be.
Yeah, it was right there.
Yeah.
But it's not right there on a day-to-day basis. But when I think about the moments, I'm like, oh, it's so vivid. I remember it all. If I have to go there, I can remember it very easily.
I also feel like you must have a great memory, though. Are you one of those people that has a great memory? Because I felt like there were so many picturesque details that really helped me kind of time travel with you.
I mean, people tell me that I have a great memory. To me, it's just my memory.
It's just what you know, right?
So, if somebody asks me about a story, I'm like, oh yeah, well, we did this or that, and I can kind of remember it pretty easily. But and it kind of does run in my family too.
Does it? Yeah.
So, I guess I do have a good memory.
You do, and I kind of want to just start from the beginning, if you don't mind, because when I try to describe to anyone, what I love about this book, it's just that I disagree with you that, oh, my story is boring, you've read about it before. No. And even from the beginning, your upbringing, the fact that you moved 19 times by the time you were 17, your abusive stepfather, who was also a drug dealer, who you then found out and was relieved was not your biological father.
Which I was relieved.
Which you were relieved.
I found out about that. I'm like, oh, thank God I don't share his genes, because he was such an asshole.
Yeah.
He was just not a nice person at all. I don't have any really good memories whatsoever of him being around. Neither does my mom. He was just a very dark cloud in our life.
And even, living in that environment and living really on the floor, you know, and smelling urine. You know what I mean? Like, seriously, though, you also described that you were innately happy, that you still have like a fond childhood, which I think also was very interesting. Tell me more about that, because for another child kind of growing up in this, they might not have the same, you know,
well,
experience.
I think for one, my mom is great. And I've had such a great relationship with her, and she's such a positive, happy person. Maybe that has something to do with it. I've never really thought about it. Maybe I'm also just born that way, where I just kind of am a positive person. And whenever I think back to my childhood, like, yes, I remember all those things, but it didn't bother me. And it also felt like when you grow up like that, and that's just how everyone grows up, it's just, that's normal.
You didn't know anything else.
You don't know that there's a better way to live. You don't know that other people don't smell urine down the hallway of your apartment building every day. Like, it's just sort of how it is.
Right. That's amazing, though, that bond with your mother has always been.
Always been.
Yeah, that's a gift. And you also said, you know, because of you were bullied for your size, you know, like you did not have it easy, you know, and you had to go into the survival mode.
Yeah, I mean, I think being smaller than everybody, but also moving a lot.
Yes.
And showing up at new schools a lot. I think regardless of your size, if you're the new kid, you're always getting picked on.
Yeah.
I think just being smaller than everyone made it worse. But, but you know, it also, I mean, harder times build stronger people, I think.
Right.
And I think all that stuff kind of prepped me for life later on.
Yes.
So I'm thankful for it all.
And you were also fortunate because you were born with this love of music, and music was your solace.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And tell me about that. I love when you were describing some of your earliest memories, you know, with the monkeys, and like, tell me all about that. I love it.
Well, I wasn't really allowed to watch like a lot of TV that was, you know, cartoon based or something like that, because my stepdad was so homophobic, and he always thought like it's like, you watch this stuff, it's going to make you gay. He used to say that all the time. So it was like, you could watch like reruns of old shows and he'd be cool with that. So I ended up watching stuff, and I found the Monkees, and I didn't know that was a rerun. I just thought it was, I just became obsessed with this band. And, and they happened to be doing a reunion tour when I was 6. So my parents took me to the concert, and that was my first show when I was 6 years old in 1986. And seeing that for the first time, seeing people play music that I knew, that I had the records, and I saw the TV show, and I knew the songs, and then seeing them perform, I realized you could do that. You could actually be on stage and perform music. And that's where, from that age, I felt like that's what I want to do.
That's amazing. I owe it to the Monkees. I love that. And also around that time, Run DMC, of course, had the crossover hit with Aerosmith, with Walk This Way, and that played a huge role in your life.
Yeah, like all that kind of like, you know, LL Cool J, Run DMC, Beastie Boys, like that era of hip hop was, you know, it was just so big in the late 80s and mid to late 80s. And that was my first sort of introduction to my own music that my parents were listening to.
Yes.
You know, because they liked classic rock, you know, Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin, the Stones and the Beatles, which I grew up listening to in the house, but you know, watching TV, because we didn't have MTV, but we had Much Music in Canada, which is the same kind of thing. So I would see all these videos, and that's what got me hooked on that kind of music.
Right. And you and I are the same age, so that was another thing I loved about the book, which is all of your references were also my references. And of course, there is one specific imprinting milestone that changed both of us, and that's Kurt Cobain's death. And I mean, it's hard to explain to people almost, because we were literally the prime imprinting age. I mean, it was obviously changed everything. It was like the day the music died for the world. But it being that age, and him being like the voice of our generation, and just music that no one had heard before, his passing affected us for life.
Well, also just like the, you know, being introduced to Nirvana, like when that came out, I mean, that changed everything, right?
Everything.
And I became obsessed with that kind of music, and just, I was 11 years old when Nevermind came out, and it was just, that changed everything. Like I said, like I stopped listening to hip hop at that point.
Same.
You know, it was just
literally
like,
same. I didn't become a rock fan until Nevermind.
That's the same.
That
with
was
me.
it.
So and then we lost him all of a sudden. So he was like the hero, and even in the whole band. I mean, it wasn't just Kurt Cobain, but it was just like Nirvana as a whole. I remember thinking like, you know, I want to play music, but like, do I want to play drums? Because Dave Grohl makes drums seem so cool. And
Yeah.
But Kurt, like these songs, it was just like this thing. So I ended up learning both, to play drums and guitar. But I found that my passion was more for writing music. But yeah, then we lost him all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And there was like this void.
It was also at the apex of their career. Do you know what I mean? It was literally like the Neil Young, better to burn out than fade away. I mean, he was literally the epitome of that.
Yeah.
Like the MTV Unplugged album hadn't even come out yet.
No, I remember they were advertising the Unplugged show was about to come out.
Right.
And then he passed away. And it was like, I remember thinking, because I was so young, I didn't know that they taped that before. And I was thinking, well, how's he going to do that concert?
Right.
Because they were still advertising coming up in like 2 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
Unplugged. I'm like, he's not live though.
Right. Yeah. I know. It was such a hard thing to process. So let's talk about you as a musician. So you had decided and committed at this time, like, this is it. This is what you're going to do for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And at age 16 is when you meet Greig Nori.
Greig Nori, yeah.
From Treble Charger, the lead singer. Now I know that a lot of Americans might not know who that is.
No, yeah.
But for growing up in Canada,
he was a huge rock star. I mean, he was on TV. We didn't know the difference of, say, his band and Smashing Pumpkins in terms of size, right? Like their videos came on, they were on the radio at the same time. Like it just felt like everybody's all the same level.
Right.
So to us growing up in Canada, Treble Charger and Greig Nori, they were just as big as Green Day and Smashing Pumpkins and Weezer at the time.
Right. And so tell me how you connected with him initially.
Yeah, so Steve-O and I went to a Treble Charger show in just outside of Toronto, and it was a great show. It was packed, and we happened to be the first people to get into the venue, so we were like right up stage, close up stage, and then we were also the last people to leave. And it was, everyone kind of got pushed out, and I kind of just happened to luckily stay back by just accident that like everybody had left. Steve-O had left. I'm finding myself by myself here. And I can see there's a backstage door, and I'm like, I think the band is back there. I'm going to sneak backstage. And I don't know why, because I'm a pretty shy person. I don't do that kind of stuff. But for some reason, I was compelled to just go backstage. And I just opened the door, and there was the band hanging out, having beers. And the singer of Treble Charger looked at me, and he was like, did you just sneak backstage or something? And I was like, I did. And he was like, that's pretty cool. And he's like, what's your name? I'm like, I'm Deryck. I'm in a band. I just started Sum 41 2 weeks before that. So like we didn't play a show or anything.
Did you have the name at that
Yeah, we
point?
had the
Okay, you'd
name,
already okay.
That was about it. Like we were
Yeah.
had a couple of songs we were working on, but I'm like, yeah, I'm in this band called Sum 41. We're actually we're playing our first show in a couple of weeks. You should come. And he was like, I'll be there. I'm like, okay, how do I get you a ticket? He's like, here. And he wrote his phone number on a piece of paper, and he goes, call me a couple days before the show, and I'll come. And that's how that started. And I did. I called him, and I reminded him that I was the kid that he met backstage. And he's like, yeah, okay, cool, I'll be there. Put me on the list. And I'm like, what's a list?
Yeah.
I have no idea what that means. But anyways, he showed up, and that began this like friendship at first. He liked our band. He gave us some shows with Treble Charger. He started helping us out a little bit. And we were so in awe that this rock star was like paying attention to us. And we were just trying to like stay in contact with this guy. He was so nice and so cool. And then he started inviting us out to parties. And like I said, he put us on some Treble Charger shows. And we kind of became friends. And we're like these high school kids that all of a sudden we're now hanging out with all these other rock stars that through him. And he was taking us to these parties in Toronto where everyone's going to basement parties in high school. And we're going out to these like wild parties in downtown Toronto that are filled with rock stars and all these, this wildness that was just, it was crazy. We started doing it almost every single night. And we were coming home at like 5 a.m. and then going to school at like 7:30 in the morning with like an hour and a half sleep, and telling people like what we did the night before. And people were just like, who are these guys?
Yeah.
Like,
this was your life now.
Yeah.
And this really kind of set the tone and put you on a certain track. And Greig continued to be part of this. And
he started helping us. Like, he would help me with my songwriting. He would say, he's like, you're a good songwriter, but like, you've got a lot of, your songs go all over the place. You don't have any choruses. You have this one moment that's catchy, but then you go off of it. Like, he started like telling me the song structure and stuff like that. And,
yeah.
And then I would go back home and start working on songs, and my songs were improving kind of quickly. So I think he saw that progress. And after about 2 years, he was like, I think I should be your manager.
Okay. And then you came up with In Too Deep, which you wrote in like 10 minutes or something. Like
Yeah. So, I mean, that had been a couple years into, us hanging out with Greig Nori. And it's funny because I was waiting for Dave Brownsound to come pick me up. We were supposed to go out somewhere, and he was late, which he always is. He's still late all the time. He's just that guy.
Okay.
And he just never showed up. So I was literally waiting by the door, and to kill time, I just picked up my guitar and I started noodling around, and then I just kind of came up with this little guitar thing, which is the intro to the song In Too Deep. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. It doesn't really sound like Sum 41. It doesn't sound that punk rock, because we were a really fast kind of punk rock band at that time. And I was like, but it's catchy, I'm going to put it down. And then I just started humming something, and I was like, well, that's actually kind of catchy. And then I just came up with the rest of the song, like kind of on the spot. And Dave never showed up. And then I remember calling Greig Nori, and I go, I think I got something kind of catchy. What do you think? And I just played it for him over the phone. He goes, that's a hit song. And he's like, I think you just wrote a hit song for the first time. I'm like, I don't even know what that means.
Right.
Right. Because I don't think in those terms yet. I'm still just like at the end of high school at that point.
Of course.
And he goes, but you know what? I'm working with this other artist, this guy who you may remember, Snow, who had sung Informer. Which is 90, was the same years, Nevermind, I think, actually.
It was a massive song.
Yeah.
Just for context, it was a huge song.
Yeah, it was a huge song. And he goes, I'm working with the rapper Snow right now, and we've got this group that we're doing, and it's going to be this Japanese release only. He's got a record deal in Japan with Sony or something like that. Because this would be perfect for that. I'm like, great, cool, let's do it.
So he suggested you give away your first hit song.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I'm in high school. Like, he's like,
know.
it's not a punk rock song. You guys would never use it. And I'm like, sure, you're right. It doesn't make sense for Sum 41. But like, holy crap, I'm going to have a hit song with somebody in Japan?
Right.
Like, that was blowing my mind that was a possibility.
So then tell me about like the next step then, because now your lives were about to change. You were about to get into the industry. You were about to have the record deal and the publishing deal. So tell me about the transition there.
Yeah, so around that time in like 17, 18, 19, everything was happening really fast. A lot of stuff was going on. Like I got offered a publishing deal. And, different than a record deal, but similar in a way. But it was it's a way to get a record deal, because now I'm in the industry. I'm signed to EMI Publishing, and that can open more doors. And the publishing thing, why it's different than a record company, is because it's a deal for the songwriter, and I was the sole songwriter of the band. So it was really a deal for me, not for Sum 41. It was a deal for me in anything that I write with anybody. Right. So that was the first big thing of like giving us the confidence, like that these songs are actually good enough to impress a company like EMI. Maybe we have something.
It legitimized your work.
Yeah. Gave us more confidence, and we just kept going. And we used the money to do, it wasn't a lot of money up front, but it was enough money that we bought a video camera. We bought a little bit of gear. And the most important thing that we did was like, we're just going to start filming everything we do now. For no reason. We just thought, well, we want to show all our friends. We want to make funny videos for our friends, things like that. Like, let's go cause trouble around Ajax, our hometown. And then we'll just make a little compilation of all the stuff that we do, egging houses and like drive-by squirt gunning people and stealing pizza, whatever we want, just dumb stuff. And we thought that would be funny. And so we did that. We showed our friends. And then Greig Nori, our manager, saw it, and he goes, this is what's going to get you a record deal. And we're like, how? Like us egging houses?
Yeah.
How's that going to get us a record deal? And he's like, no, this is perfect because your music's over it. Like, this will show your personality. Like, this is we're going to send this out to record companies. I remember thinking, this is the worst idea ever. Ended up being the best idea, because once we sent that out, it just started getting passed around. And this is before, obviously, YouTube, and there was like, you could post anything on the internet, and it was just a VHS. But people started dubbing it and giving it to people, and it spread around the industry to a point where all of a sudden every record company wanted to.
There was a bidding war.
It turned into a bidding war, and all of a sudden this no-name band that was just out of high school all of a sudden had every record company in the U.S. wanting to fly up to Toronto to come see us.
That's unbelievable. So you signed a 3.5 million record deal with Island Def Jam, becoming the label's first rock band with the biggest deal ever signed by a Canadian band.
Yes.
I mean, wow. And your lives were about to change forever.
Yeah, totally. It was just, I mean, again, it was like that. You still had to write the songs, and we still had to make a record, and we still had to go out there and do it, but it gave us the confidence that, like, okay, well, all these people seem to think we can do it. Now I got to go write all these songs.
So then how did you save In Too Deep for yourself? And
Well, In Too Deep went on this wild journey. So Snow and that whole group recorded a version of it, and it actually sounded good.
Okay.
It was really cool. And I still have the demo of that version.
I need to hear that.
I might have it here. I don't know.
Oh,
but,
really?
It's possible. I could look at my phone. But
Yeah.
anyways, it didn't come out. I don't know whatever happened to it. The group dissolved. It just like didn't happen.
Okay.
And then Greig Nori said, you know what? Oh, and I remember thinking, great, now Sum 41 can do this song. We'll turn it into our own hit. And he was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, I mean, I would take the song back if it's not being used. And he goes, that's not a Sum 41 song. That's going to be a Treble Charger song.
Oh, right.
And I remember him, the way he said it to me made me feel almost embarrassed for even suggesting that it should be Sum 41. He was like, what are you talking about? Like, it's Treble Charger song now. Like, we're the ones who can make it a hit, not Sum 41. And I remember thinking, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, I'm a very impressionable teenager at that point. And Greig Nori was this huge rock star who knew all, and we believed everything that he said. And actually, part of, like, him becoming our manager, that was like a prerequisite for him. He was like, you have to listen to everything I say.
Yeah.
You can't talk to anybody else. He's like, I've been through it all. You can only trust me, and everyone else is going to lie to you. Everyone else is going to rip you off. Everyone, like, don't talk to anybody and don't trust anybody. Everything goes through me, and I will never steer you wrong.
Yeah.
And we were 17 at that point when he became our manager. And so we're like, oh, thank you. You know, like this is all we could ever dream of.
Very manipulative and a very dangerous dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't know that at the time. It's only as
course.
I got older, as I got to the age that he was, which we never knew how old he was. We didn't really care. We knew he was older than us, obviously.
Right.
But
When you're 17, 20 is old.
yeah,
So
exactly. Like anything past 20 is old to us.
Yes.
Even 19 was old when you were 17. So we thought he was like, 26, 27. We later found out at that time he was 35 or something like that.
Yeah.
So once I hit 35, I realized, wow, like what somebody with that life experience talking to 16 and 17-year-olds, like how easy it was for us to go down all these paths with him and to just buy into whatever he was selling.
Of course. And recognizing the innocence of you guys.
Yeah.
And still, injecting his guidance, which evolved more than guidance.
Now I will say, like, there was so much great about his advice, and he did help us so much. I mean, there was no way we could have ever gotten to where we got to without him. I mean, he did guide us all the way through all this stuff, and he was amazing at a lot of things. He was not so great at some things as well. It's that weird thing of somebody can be so great at something and so, I guess you could say, evil in some ways,
Well, he started to really assert control over, and that's really kind of where it started, where he started to be like, no, I know what's best for you. Actually, I'm a co-writer on this. And he would start to take credit for things.
Well, this is where things started to go south, which we didn't really see at the time, was as things started progressing with the band and the more there was any success or even just like some prospects of success, like when we got the record deal and I started writing songs that were all of a sudden sounding like they could be on the radio and things like that, he started to realize he doesn't have the control that he wants. So in my opinion, I mean, it seems like it would be very easy, like we said, like for impressionable teenagers who trusted someone, he would say things like, okay, that song In Too Deep, so many people think that I had something to do with that song because we had it for Snow and then Treble Charger tried to do it. And by the way, we never finished that Treble Charger part. They did record In Too Deep for their hit version, and it was terrible. It just didn't sound good. So once that song didn't work for Treble Charger, he gave it back to me for Sum 41. But he was like, so many people, which who's so many people, right? Like nobody.
Who are these people?
Yeah, but it was so many people know or think that I had something to do with that song, so I need to have 50% ownership of In Too Deep moving forward, or it's going to look really strange to people.
Okay. That's the manipulation.
Yeah, so when we started doing the paperwork of like the co-writers and who owns the songs and stuff like that, he became a co-writer on that song. Which I will say, like, there was moments, like, when we were doing, like, he did contribute a couple words, like, in the second verse and stuff like that. He was very good at saying, that's a really great song. Don't finish it. Let me help you finish, like, a couple words on there. So all of a sudden it was like...
He was involved.
All of a sudden you're involved. It's like, well, I need to get 50% publishing on that now.
Yes. Okay.
Which at the time, I don't really know how all that stuff works. But again, I don't want to completely trash him in that he did nothing for us. He did a lot for us, and he did have a lot of great ideas. Again, it's just as the success grew for the band, and I can only see this as an outside perspective looking back at it now.
Yes.
You could see this, there was this jealousy and losing control because there was more people involved and more people had, we were listening to more people. Like, we wanted to hear what people from the record company said, and stuff like that.
Well, his importance was becoming less.
Yeah, there was just more people who were bigger and more powerful than him and had a say in the project. And he felt like he was losing control, so he tried to, like, tighten his grip and wanted more pieces of the pie of the band so he could have more control. So all of a sudden... it was like, okay, I remember him saying, it looks really strange if I only have ownership on one song. I should have ownership on all the songs because it's going to look really strange if I wrote In Too Deep with you, but I didn't write anything else. So I should have Fat Lip. I should have this and that. And just, it went on and on.
Yeah. And then, of course, he crossed the line and continued to, because it was all about control.
Everything was
really
control,
was about control.
Yeah, looking back at it now, it was very obvious that it was all just I guess you could say he's a control freak. I don't know. I don't know what it was. I don't know what the motivation was. I can't speak what was inside his head. Was it for money? Was it for just ego? Was it? I don't know what it was.
Right.
No idea.
Yeah. And as you were becoming so massive and the songs did get on the radio, there was a turning point. And that was when you opened MTV's 20th anniversary special with Motley Crue, with Tommy Lee and Judas Priest, Rob Halford. I went back and I watched it, by the way. And it was such a captured moment of time, and you guys just catapulted. I mean, it was...
At that moment, that was like the turning point for us. Because before that, Fat Lip was on the radio and it was doing well, but we were still such a brand new band that you almost like couldn't associate the name with that song yet. Like, nobody really knew who Sum 41 was. They maybe heard that song a couple times, but we were lucky enough to get asked to open the MTV 20th anniversary party, and we thought, we want to do something that's like those old collaborations we've seen before for MTV Awards and stuff like that. So we asked them, can we do that? They were like, great, sure. So we started brainstorming ideas. Who could we ask? And we were like, well, we had heard that Tommy Lee was going to be there. So we're like, oh, man, can we get Tommy? That would be amazing. And then we're like, well, who else? Let's ask Slash. Maybe that would be cool. And then somebody said, well, what about Rob Halford? Like, because we say Made It in a Priest, where the gods will be praised. It's Fat Lip. We're like, let's ask Rob Halford. And we just thought none of these people were going to say yes. But, pretty quickly, Tommy was like, yeah, I'll do it. And Rob Halford was like, yeah, I'll do it. It's like, and it just came together so fast. And we happened to be on the Warped Tour at the time, and we were just going to fly in for the show, and then we were out. So we had no rehearsal time. So we were just putting this medley together in the back of the tour bus, and we were just going to show up at sound check the day before and get with the guys and meet Rob Halford and Tommy Lee for the first time and run this thing a couple times and then just go out on stage and do it.
And it was perfect. It was a great performance.
Watching it now, yes, it feels like, oh, it went off without a hitch. But during the performance, all I was thinking was like, oh my God, you're counting all the mistakes you're making. They don't really come across as much as when you're on stage making it. But I walked off thinking we'd failed.
Well, there was so much pressure. And that was a moment. That was like, here's your shot. Here's your introduction.
It was the shot. And we all kind of knew it was our shot. We didn't know we didn't know what the outcome would be if we won the moment or if we lost the moment. We just knew that this was important.
This was the moment.
We knew it was important. And I thought we blew it. We totally messed this whole thing up. And as I was walking off stage, I even apologized to Tommy. And I was like, I messed up, man. I did this and that. And he was like, what? He's like, dude, it was awesome.
Best impression. It's the best Tommy impression,
Yeah.
too.
And I'm like, really? He's like, dude, it was killer. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then we walk off stage, and everybody was just like applauding us in the green room, and it just turned into this whole thing. The heads of MTV were coming up to us and were like, we're gonna have a great future together, and all this stuff. And it was just, they're like, and then all of a sudden they were ushering us out to meet all these different famous people, and it was just like one person after the next, everyone congratulating us. And I was like, and Slash was one of the first people I saw. And he was like, thank you for asking me to do it. I can't play Guns N' Roses with anybody else.
Yeah.
But thank you. He's like, you guys killed it. Tommy's one of my best friends, and blah, blah, blah.
That's so great.
And then it was just like, what is happening to us all of a sudden? Like, people know Slash knows who we are, thanking us? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. That's next level. And then your lives would never be the same. Like,
Nothing was ever the
that was the
same.
ascent. Yeah.
Everything from that moment on was different. My life has never been the same since that night.
That's also when a lot of drugs came into the picture. I mean,
drugs came into the picture
before that. Before that. But now it was like big level drug. It was just everywhere. I feel like
the funny thing is I think we partied harder before we made it. There was so much work to be done once we start having success. So yes, we partied a lot, but we were worse before everything took off because we just had so much more time.
Yeah.
Whereas like I would say the party moments in Sub 41 like after Fat Lip, they were big moments, but they were fewer and far between.
Yes.
So like we'd have these big nights where you stay up for 2 nights going crazy, and then you work for 6 months.
Right.
And you don't party. I mean, we were drinking a lot,
Yeah.
but like not these big crazy nights. So you're having like 5 big nights a year, but they were big nights.
They were huge nights, including that night in Tokyo.
Oh yeah, so that was on Does Look Affected.
Yes.
See, the problem with that was we'd felt like we just went through all killer no filler cycle, and everyone's telling us we're these huge rock stars now. You're selling like millions and millions of albums, and we're like, all we feel like is like we're just being worked to the bone. We're up at 6 a.m.
And you weren't really seeing the money yet.
No
Right.
money, nothing. We're just like working. We're hardly getting to party the way we think we should.
Yes.
And we're missing so many parties. Like even after the MTV 20th anniversary party, everyone went to this big after party, but we got on the bus and we went back to the Warped Tour.
Yeah.
And so we were constantly missing every after party at every event, and we just thought we would get to enjoy the success, but instead we're just working.
Right.
So when Does Look Affected came around, we're like, we are gonna party like we're rock stars now. And we started out, and it was a promo tour where we didn't really have to like perform every day. There was a lot of press and stuff like that, where we just thought, well, we don't have to like actually perform, and I don't have to actually sing. So we could technically just kind of like
push it a little bit.
till 5 a.m. Who cares? The press starts at 7. Like we can just kind of stay up through it. I'll just throw some sunglasses on, and so that's what we started doing, and things got really out of control.
Yeah.
And we just took it to a level.
That's
that
a slippery slope.
Yeah.
But that one night in Tokyo, you were taking, this was like a unique drug.
Yes. So it was legal, which we thought it was just going to be like, like Flintstone vitamin drugs.
Yeah.
And so mushrooms used to be legal in 2001. So every time we went to Japan on the All Killer tour, on the very last night when we were just having to fly the next day, we would stay up and do mushrooms and roam the streets of Tokyo and just have this wild trip. And it was always fun and relatively harmless. And by 2003, they'd banned mushrooms. But they're like, we have this other thing that you can just get at the store. Like, it's just like this little vial of powder. It's called Blue Mystic powder. And you mix it in a drink or whatever, and we're like, I guess, I don't know, it doesn't really sound that fun. Steve-O, our drummer at the time, he's like, I want to go find this stuff. And we all hung out at the bar. He left. He came back, and he found these like pre-mixed vials, and he bought like 10 of them or something like that. So he started handing them out to us. And we just like knocked back a vial, and it's like half an hour goes by. I'm like, this is
You're like,
nothing.
I'm not feeling
this
anything.
is nothing. We're like, well, let's take another one. Do another one.
Oh, God.
Another half an hour goes by. We're like, this is stupid. This is nothing. We're just having drinks and just whatever. Dave had left us, so it was just Cone, Steve-O, and I. And we're like, I mean, it's been an hour and a bit now. Like, nothing. Should we take another one or just throw it away? We're like, let's take another one.
Yeah.
Why not? And we
Third's a
just
charm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We take the third one, still nothing for about half an hour. We're having drinks, and it's like now pretty late, and all of a sudden we're just kind of like, I remember there's like a Scooby-Doo poster on the wall, and it just started looking like it was just kind of like starting to like kind of wave a little bit, and like things started kind of coming out of the poster slowly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do you see that? And they're like, oh yeah. And then it got really intense. We're like, oh, I think this is actually kicking in. And then from that moment on, every 15, 20 minutes, it just went to a new
Another
level.
level.
And a new level. And then it was like 5 a.m, the bar was kicking us out, but we were in that like really, really high, but like laughing kind of, we're like just like all laying out on the couch, like on top of like laying on each other, like laughing at stuff and just like pointing at things that are just weird to us. They kicked us out of the bar. We went back to the hotel, and by the time we got to the hotel, it was like full fear and loathing. Like when they walk into the hotel, and the whole
Yes.
that's
a great
everything's like
reference,
coming out
yeah.
of the floor, and we're like, we are
Holy-
tripping balls now.
Yeah.
And then we just got in the elevator, and we went up and down the elevator for an hour, just going up. And it was one of those elevators that was all windows, so you could see the city. And every time we would go up, we'd all go, whoa. And we'd cheer when
Like
we get
you're
to
a
the
child
top.
going
Yeah.
through a tunnel.
And then we'd
Like,
go
woo.
down, we're like, whoa. And then the doors would open, and it was like, it was so bright and white, like it was like sparkling. And we were like, you know what, that's heaven out there. That's like, the lobby is heaven, and upstairs is hell. Because when you get up to the top, it was all dark. The doors would open. It was just the hallways. It was dark. We were like, no, we can't go out there. And we'd go down. We're like, should we go into heaven? And it was that kind of
Oh my
trip.
God.
And we're like, we can't go into heaven because God's going to punish us. And so we're like, the elevator opened, and we all like hold each other. We're trying to get out to see if like we're going to get in trouble somehow. And anyways, it went on and on and on, and it got worse and worse and worse to a point where things got kind of dark. Mm-hmm. And we went up to the hell level.
Yes.
And we went into the hallway, and it got even more like that fear and loathing kind of thing, where I remember Steve-O just went down this path of like saying really weird stuff. He was reminding me of Benicio del Toro's character in that movie. And he disappeared for a while, and before he disappeared, he was talking about this girl that he met at the bar who he was in love with, and he was going to marry her one day, and he misses her, and he wants to go back to the bar and find her. And he just disappears, and he comes back out 20 minutes later with a pineapple. And he goes, this is her. And
Oh my God.
But he was talking to her like it was a real person.
Like it was a person.
And we're like,
Like,
okay, he's really lost,
lost
it.
it.
Now.
He's
And
lost
Then
it.
he disappeared again. And he came out really scared, and he was like, I've killed her. And we're like, what are you talking about? He's like, her name was Mai. And he's like, I killed Mai. We're like, what are you talking? And he pulls out this pineapple, and there's a knife in it.
Okay.
It was that kind of knife.
And that's scary because
It's very scary.
Yeah.
Because we're like, okay, this is how people, like, you know, they do too much drugs and they jump off a building, or they end up stabbing somebody.
It's
to death.
true.
Like,
It's
you
true.
know.
And the scariest thing of all is that it never really left you. Like you had remnants of that, of anxiety and panic disorder.
Yeah, because it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And it got to the point where everyone had to just kind of leave on their own. And I was stuck in my hotel room. And now it's like 7 a.m. And we had a full day of press that day.
Yeah.
And it was starting in like an hour. And I'm like, I'm getting higher and higher still. Every time I thought that it couldn't get worse, it got worse.
Wow. Oh my God.
And I just realized all of a sudden I started having a panic attack, which I didn't know was a panic attack at the time. And I'm freaking out, and I didn't know what to do. And I started chugging vodka, and that helped bring it down a little bit. But I didn't know what it was. And basically what had happened is like it had opened the door to panic and anxiety disorder that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
And from that day on, for about a year and a half, I had a panic attack every day. Almost like multiple times a day. Like I couldn't stop focusing on it. The second I woke up, which I started having insomnia because I couldn't stop thinking about it to try to sleep, and I would have panic attacks in my bed. And I would get like an hour or two of sleep, and I'd wake up, and I'd start having panic attack again. And it was like that for a year and a half.
Yeah.
So I thought I was losing my mind. I thought I had done something to my brain from drugs. So if there was a good thing that came out of it, I stopped doing drugs when I was 23. You know, I was like, I'm done with this shit.
That's all it took.
Yeah.
I mean, the elevator that ride to heaven and hell. I mean, that's intense. During this time, you also had a whirlwind relationship with Paris Hilton.
Yeah.
And this was also at like the peak of the success. And this must have been just like, and she was coming up, she was on the rise, and
Yeah, it was funny because she wasn't like a household name yet.
Yes.
I didn't really know who she was when I met her. I was introduced to her, and they're like, "This is Paris Hilton." I'm like, "Who?"
Yeah.
I have no idea who that is. But we both were really young and just liked to party and have fun, and I don't know, we just had a really good time. I mean, the thing about it was I was on tour so much, so it's not like I was at home and we had this relationship where we're seeing each other every day. It was like I came to LA for a couple days to do some work, and we would hang out, and then I'd be gone on tour. And as time went on, after a couple months of that, it was like, "Do you want to come with me? Do you want to come on the tour?" And so she would come out with us for a week or something like that. And then as it progressed, she started coming to places like, she came over to England and stuff like that, and to Canada. And the whole thing was about 6 months long, but if you add up all the days we were together, it's probably like 3 weeks.
Yeah, right. But it was an intense 3
Yeah.
weeks. There was this one story that you shared that involved Scott Weiland of Stone Temple Pilots.
Yes.
You were at like this house party. Please tell me this, because I read that one and I was like, okay, this is iconic.
One of like the last few times I hung out with Paris, it was the night before I was supposed to go on a Canadian tour, and I was in LA, and instead of going back home to the tour, instead of going to the tour the night before it started, I thought, I'm going to fly in the day of the show because I want to hang out and stay in LA, which is a really bad move. It's a really cocky move, because if there's any problem with your travel, then there's a chance you could miss the show.
Yeah.
So I thought, you know what? Let's not party though tonight. Let's just like have a nice night. We'll watch a movie or something like that. And then, of course, you're in
Famous
LA.
last words.
Yeah, and somebody's, Paris says, "Oh, my friend's having a party in the hills. Like, do we want to go?" And I was like, I don't know, maybe one drink?
We'll stop by.
We'll just have one drink. Like, that ever happens.
No. In fact, when you say that, that's when it's the most wild night.
Yeah,
Yes.
of course, right? So
Yeah.
I literally went there thinking I'm going to have one drink, hang out, see some friends, and then I'm going to go to the airport. Because I thought, oh yeah, it'll be perfect. I have like a 6 a.m. flight. I got to be at the airport at like 4 a.m. So I'll leave at 3.
Perfect.
So
Makes
it makes
sense.
perfect sense.
Yeah.
So we go and we're partying and partying, partying. And then I kind of look at the time. I go, I got to leave. I got to go to the airport. And I try to call a cab. And I'm up in the hills. There's no service. I can't do anything. I'm like, I'm going to miss this flight. So quickly, I'm like, okay, I'm going to call my tour manager, tell him, hey, I'm not making the show. Cancel the show.
Yes.
No big deal. Like, let's move it.
I was going to move the show.
It's very young rock star thing.
Yes.
Like, hey, that show we're supposed to do tomorrow? Just move it.
Yeah.
I got a party here in LA. So I leave this message for my tour manager. I think, okay, cool. I can go back to the party now. It's all handled.
It's all handled, yeah.
So I go back to the party thinking, I got a whole day now. And so I find myself in this back room. It's like a bedroom, and it's myself, Paris, Byron, the drummer of Pennywise, and this guy who I don't know. And it's a round table just like this. We're all sitting around chatting, and everyone's doing blow, and I'm having this great time. And I'm talking to this one guy who I don't know, but he's telling me about how his band just got signed, and he's really excited for their new music. And I'm thinking, man, that's so great. Like, I'm so happy for you. Like, I'm wishing this guy all the success in the world. And
like he's a new artist.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's his first time. Right.
Yeah, and because I don't know I don't recognize him whatsoever. And he just kind of drops the name like, oh yeah, man, having Slash in the band is just so great. He's such a great guitar player. I'm like, excuse me, Slash? Like, what are you talking about? And then he says Duff, and I'm like, and then I kind of start looking, I'm like, you're Scott Weiland. And it was before we'd ever seen any photos of Velvet Revolver or like heard about this supergroup that was starting. But like he said, they had just gotten a record deal. Like, they weren't out yet, and they were working on new music. I go, oh my God, this is Scott Weiland. But he doesn't look anything like Scott Weiland that I remember. He didn't have the red hair, the goatee, or anything like that I remembered. And so we're hanging out, and all of a sudden somebody bursts in the door, and it's like, the cops are here. They're busting people for drugs. And we're like, holy shit. And like, Paris takes off all the blow from the table. It's like in her purse, and we're like, what do we do? We're all panicking. Everyone's high. For once, you're already paranoid. And we're like, the hell do we do? And I come with this, what I think is a brilliant idea.
Genius.
And I go, we're in this bedroom. Like, what if we all just like jump in this bed and get under the covers and pretend we're having an orgy. So when the cops come in, they're going to be like, oh shit, there's like weird orgy going on. Let's just leave. So we all get under the covers. The 4 of us are in this bed. Scott Weiland's right beside me. All of a sudden he starts like rubbing my chest like this. And he's like kind of like taking off his belt. I'm like, whoa, what are you doing? He's like, I thought you said we were having an orgy.
You said pretend.
No, pretend. I said pretend we're having an orgy. Oh, okay. And we also just kind of laughing, and then we're like telling some stories. The 4 of us, like adults, like we're like teenagers telling these like stories of whatever. We're all just giggling under these covers for like 15 minutes, and we're like, I don't think there's cops here. And then we kind of hear like music in the background, and we're like pull the covers over, and we're like open up the door, and somebody goes out, and they're like, oh yeah, it was a noise complaint. They just came and they left. And we're like, oh. Okay, well, let's get back to our party then.
But no orgy happened, though.
No orgy.
But that is a great idea.
It was close.
I'm with you, though. It's a genius idea. Yeah. That's unbelievable. And then you and Avril connected. You had known each other through the Canadian music scene.
Yeah, so, well, we had similar... when Avril was first starting out, she had a manager that ended up partnering with our manager, Greig Nori. So... I got a call one day from her manager saying, hey, I've got this new young artist. She's working on new music. She needs a band. Do you have any friends that you grew up with that are kind of like you guys, that know how to play instruments, that just aren't, in a band? I go, I do actually, of course. Like I've got like 3 friends that are just like us that play instruments. So I helped put her band together, and that's kind of how I met her. And it was before her first record came out. And then one day we met, in Vancouver when she was in rehearsals and her record was just being wrapped up, and she played me a few songs. And I remember thinking, man, this is going to be big. This is like really good. This is probably going to sell like 3 to 4 million albums, which was in my mind massive.
Right.
I was like, this might even sell 5 million albums. And then cut to not that long later, 6 months later, the record was out and it just skyrocketed. Yeah. And she was like the biggest new artist on the planet.
Yeah,
and ended up
globally.
selling 15 million albums.
Yeah, unbelievable. So your ears knew. Your ears did know.
Yeah, but no one can predict. Anyone who has been a part of something so big, no one will ever say they knew it would be that big.
Right,
Everyone can predict that's going to be big, but you never know when it's going to go that big.
Yeah. And what was it that connected you guys?
I don't know. I think there was just some spark between us right away. We just kind of got along. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it was. We kind of went on our separate ways for about almost 2 years. And because her band were my best friends, and she was a fan of Sum 41, and we were on the same management, we would just kind of cross paths for a couple of years.
There's an organic fit.
Yeah, so we just would hang out now and then. We'd be in the same city at the same time or something like that. Or we didn't really, back then, music was so separated, and she was considered a pop star, and we were in rock.
True. It was
and you
separate.
did not
It was separate.
play on the same festival. Like now we play on festivals together. Back then we didn't. So it was, we never really played together, but we would be in the same city at the same time, and things like that. Mm-hmm. And that's how it grew. It only turned into a relationship once we were both off tour. Now this is like 2 years later, and she was finishing up her second record, and we were finishing up the Chuck album, which was like our third record, and we happened to live down the street from each other. She actually moved in next door to Greig Nori, our manager.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden now, that proximity, we just started seeing each other at home in Toronto.
Yeah.
And quickly then it was just once we started seeing each other almost every day for 2 weeks, it was now we're dating.
Yeah.
Without really saying we were dating, it just kind of went there. And all of a sudden I found myself living at her house, and that was that.
Yeah. Now another significant thing about, of course, you guys got married, but Avril was the first person that you shared what was happening, the extent to what was happening with Greig Nori. And she was the first one to recognize that this is actually abuse.
Abuse, yeah.
And you hadn't thought about what was happening in those terms until...
Never. No, because I always thought, the thing is on top of all the music stuff with Greig, he wanted to have a sexual relationship with me. And through being young and going through... being the idol and listening to everything that he had to say, it kind of made sense to me that we had this special connection, right? Like I did find that like, wow, we do have this friendship that I've never felt with anybody else. Like, and I don't know if that's just because I idolized him or if there really was like this, like we just get each other on this like mental level that I don't with anybody else. I don't know. But through that, and also we were doing, like I said, a lot of drugs back then, a lot of ecstasy back then.
Yeah.
And having somewhat of a sexual relationship seemed, it was a little far for me, and I wasn't really able to go too far with it, but like somewhat of an experimenting with it seemed like I could wrap my head around that. But I quickly realized it wasn't really something I was that interested in. But I found myself kind of being, I mean, he made me feel like, oh, no, we've started this now. Like, this is how it has to be now. We are having this type of relationship, and you can't change it once it's started. And I went along with it. And so I always felt like that was my own fault, right? And I'm giving you the shorter version because it happened over many years, and it was like a slow process that I felt like I got dragged along. It's really hard to explain it quickly,
right?
Which is why I wrote it in a book.
Yes, I understand. Because it started so young. When you were so young,
and I never really thought it was anything other than my own fault and a choice that I made. And it's just something that, although I didn't want to do it or didn't like it, it was still my own fault. And once that relationship with him ended, I didn't really tell anybody, and I wasn't going to tell anybody. But as Avril and I started getting more serious, and we were engaged, and she was gonna be my wife, I was like, I got to tell you something. This is something I never thought I would tell anybody. When I told her what it was, she's like, "That's abuse." I'm like, "Well, not really. I mean, I said I went along with it, and that was the first time I'd ever heard the word associated with that situation, and we never spoke about it ever again. It was one conversation." And I never thought about it ever again. It was like once I said it out loud for the first time to somebody. I'd said it out loud once to somebody else who was a friend of Greig's. We had this like mediator friend who helped stop it all happening because she was the one to say, "He doesn't want to do it, Greig. Like, leave him alone." And that's how it all kind of ended. So other than her, Avril was the first person I'd ever really spoken to about it. And I just never thought about it ever again. Just kind of went away. And it only came back in my life and in my mind when I was 35.
That age.
The age that he was when I met him when I was 16, and I realized how easily that was to manipulate a 16-year-old who idolized him.
Right.
That's when it all came back.
Yes.
And then not too long after that, about 2 years after that, there was, it was 2017, and there was Me Too. Right? And I started hearing stories that were similar. I never heard the words grooming and all this kind of stuff until then. And I started realizing, is that what that all was? All that. And then I started thinking back to like those first few years of being kind of pulled along in that direction. Right? It made me realize, or not realize, but made me think, is that what that all was? Is that why he gave me his number when I snuck back? And then I said, why would he want to see a band, 16-year-old kid's band, play their first show? What was he's a rock star. What does he care?
Right.
All these questions started popping up. I don't have any answers to those because he has all those answers. Right. But it made me question everything, and it put it in a different perspective, I guess, or made me think of it differently.
Have you spoken with him at all?
No.
Are you nervous for this book to come out?
I'm nervous. I was very nervous when I started writing the book and going down these subjects because when I started writing the book, like I said before, I didn't think of, okay, I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to hit that point, I'm going to do this. I just started writing from day one, and as I get to the Greig Nori stuff, I'm like, am I going to go there? I mean, I always thought I would take this to my grave. I didn't think I was ever going to go public with this. Like, it doesn't bring me any joy to be like, say this about it. Like, I don't want to, there's a big part of me that feels, I don't know, just, I don't even know what I feel about it. It's still too new because it's not out yet. So I don't even know what I feel about it. But it was hard to even want to talk about this stuff. But as I got through it, writing it, I was like, well, how do I leave this out? Because it's so intertwined with everything, right? Like it's intertwined with how I wrote songs. There's a lot of songs about all of it. There's a lot of songs. How do I tell the story of In Too Deep without bringing up the Greig Nori stuff, and how do I tell that part of the Greig Nori stuff without it, where it led to after that? You know, it was all part of it, and even like I said, like as Avril and I started getting more serious, and I told her for the first time, and it was such a huge moment for me and helped me get over it. Like, how do I leave that out?
Right.
Why do you tell a story about your life and leave big moments out?
Yeah. And I think as I was reading it, I just was like, wow, that takes such courage. But it's almost like it probably wasn't even a conscious thought. It just
wasn't conscious
poured
at all.
out of you because it's part of you. It's part of your story. It helped you become who you are because you had to process and navigate. And I'm sure there were so many lessons learned, you know, that
sure.
you would, like, if you could go back now, you know, what would you say to yourself?
I you know, I get that question all the time, like, what would you say to your younger self? And there's not much I would say other than, you know, I like all the things that I've been through. I just didn't like them while I was going through it.
Yeah.
But I feel like my life has always gotten better after I've gotten through something difficult. So I've never been worse off after something bad. I'm always better off. And so I appreciate the struggles and all the things and the lows and the
rock bottom moments.
Yeah, I like
which
all
you've
those. I just
experienced,
don't like them while I'm in it. Nobody likes it
no
while
one
you're in
does.
it. But getting out of it, to me, it's like the last chapter in the book, which I call the gift of injury. Every time I've ever been physically injured or hurt or mentally or something I've gone through that's really difficult, I always build that back up stronger. That part of me gets stronger.
You do, and in addition to the trauma, it's the triumphs. And you have had a lot of rock bottom moments with illness, you know, the pneumonia or your chronic back pain and self-medication and just everything that comes with it. You really have hit not just one, but several moments where you couldn't walk, you couldn't play guitar. And that can do something to your mind, but you are very resilient. And that was a recurring theme for me that I was like, wow, Deryck, wow, you know, and you did not make it easy on yourself.
No, I've probably had an easy life that I've made very difficult. But
like when you went to rehab too soon, you said, because you weren't ready and you kind of even like.
I did it for other people.
Right.
I did it because, and the funny thing about the intervention, when people said, you know, we think you should go to rehab, I kind of knew at the time, like, well, this is the first time anyone has ever said anything about my drinking. And I agree that it was, I say we were drinking because we were all bad at that point, but I was the one who was kind of steering the ship, right?
Right.
Because I've always been that role in the band. So it was kind of like, hey, you're fucking everything up for us.
Yes.
So you should go figure that out. We're going to still do what we do, but you need to go figure that part out. So I was like, okay, as a team player, I'm going to go. But the reason why I say it was too soon is because there's a little bit of a misconception about my alcoholism is people assume that, like, oh, you were just alcoholic the entire time because we drank all the time. I never felt any physical addiction whatsoever until a certain point. So by the time when I went to rehab for other people, I wasn't physically addicted. Like, I just was like, yeah, okay, I'll go. And I just stopped drinking, but I didn't feel like, oh, I need a drink or anything. You know, like I was able to go months at that time without ever craving alcohol or anything. So it was very easy to just stop, go to rehab. And I'm sitting there thinking, everyone's telling all these stories. I'm like, man, I don't have anything like this.
Right.
Like, I would get to my turn to share. I go, I don't know, my band really wanted me to go here because, you know, like, we party a lot and, like, I'm kind of in control of a lot of stuff, and they're worried that the ship's not going to sail the way it's supposed to.
Right.
And everyone's not going to make as much money as they could. And so it's kind of just like, everyone's looking at me like, I've lost my family. I've been in jail. I've had multiple DUIs. I accidentally ran over somebody, you know, like all these things, right? I'm like, I don't have any of this stuff. So I'm going to leave rehab and just go back to just doing what I do, because I'm not an alcoholic. I just like to party.
Right. And then it actually did take a turn where it did get worse.
Then the biggest thing is the self-medicating. When my back pain started getting really bad, and then on top of that, my anxiety and panic started getting really bad, and I started self-medicating for both of those. That's when my body became dependent. And I found myself not being able to, like, make it too long without, like, starting to have shakes, and all of a sudden, like, my body needed it. And I was always terrified because people would tell me, you know, you can't just stop drinking. You could have, it's really dangerous. You could have seizures and all this kind of stuff. So I'd always think these shakes are like the beginning of a seizure. So I'd go running for a drink. And then I would just like kind of mellow out. And then once you have one drink, you're like, nah, I'll have another one.
Yeah, of course.
And then you have
yeah.
two, and you're like, this is awesome. I'm having a great time.
feel great.
And I'm a happy drunk. So,
Yeah.
so I was like, this is great. And everything just turns into a fun party again every day. And that's the cycle just kept continuing.
That's the cycle.
And then I would stop drinking. The anxiety would come on. My back pain would get really bad. I could hardly get out of a seat. And then my shakes. I'm like, okay, just have a drink. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I now feel good.
And then you met Ari. And you guys had some low moments together. So this has been a journey for the two of you as a couple. What was that turning point where the two of you decided that you were going to change your lives?
Well, once the band pretty much imploded in like 2013, and we'd been on, it was the end of a 3-year touring cycle, and it was really long. And then at the end of it, Steve-O quit the band, and I never wanted to talk to those guys again, and everything was uncertain if we were going to still be a band or whatever. All I knew was like, I didn't want to talk to anybody. We're just going to take some time off. And Ari and I went down this path of just like, I had no responsibility anymore. I didn't have to be around anybody. And we were just at home in LA and just drank and partied and, you know, just went down that path where we were just drinking all day. And we had a great time. You know, we thought we were having fun, which we were laughing and having fun. You think it's fun, but we're not doing anything.
Right.
We're just drinking, chatting, and watching movies or having friends over, but we're not being productive people.
You're kind of
in society.
existing
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Yes, existing together.
So we just got worse and worse and worse. And it started causing a lot of, which I didn't know at the time, was she started feeling depressed. And she was very good at hiding it, and we were very good at pouring alcohol on all of our issues at that point. And then it got to a point where I'd gone to bed one night, and in the middle of the night, she decided she didn't want to live, and she went into the garage and started the car, and just, that was going to be it. And thankfully, a friend of ours happened to come over to the house in the middle of the night, because he used to live with me, so he had a key, and he had some stuff at the house, and he goes, I hear a rumbling in the garage. What is that? And he goes and opens and he sees Ari passed out in the car. And he comes and wakes me up, and I was just so confused because I'd never noticed anything. For one, we were always drunk, but she was also really good at hiding it. So it was a very confusing time, and all we did after that too, like we spoke about it, but we weren't in any kind of place to deal with anything real. You know, we just kept drinking and pouring more alcohol on it, and it got even worse and worse and worse, to the point where then all of a sudden I ended up in the hospital with liver and kidney failure. And that was the moment both of us were like, this is bad. We need to stop, because for one, I'm literally dying in a bed. They're trying to save my life. My organs are failing. She's still drunk and still has like a bottle of vodka in a water bottle that she brought to the hospital with her, because we're so deep in it.
Yeah.
And she's in the bathroom chugging this vodka because like it's such a panic, like what the hell's going on? And she thinks like I might not make it. And you know, it was that kind of moment where she realized, what am I doing? And she just like dumped out the vodka, and that was her last drink.
Wow.
And so that was
chills.
the day we both just said, you know what, this is stupid. And we just started working on it from that moment on. It took a long time. It took years and years, and it's always a work in progress.
Yeah.
You know.
But you do have this innate gift. You really do. It's this innate happiness we talked about as a child, the optimism, and the ability. I guess it's a love of life, you know, at the end of the day, where you want to change things, and the ability to do that is such an inspiration. And look what you guys have now together, and your beautiful children.
Totally.
And what you've built is so beautiful.
I think there is somewhat, there is a certain amount of gift of being happy, but I also would say her and I both really work on it a lot too. Like there's a lot of, like my days are pretty filled with, you know, I do a lot of meditation. I wake up and I do certain exercises. Like I work on myself, and so does she. And we just, whether it's just reading a lot or like working on our own happiness of focusing on gratitude, like there's just all the things, right? All the mental gratitude practices and meditation and working on ourselves physically to just feel alive.
Yes.
You know, so there is, and when I've noticed that when I do all those things every day, I'm already a happy person, but it just takes it to a different level. obviously it changes you. I don't really think about like, oh, now I'm different because of this. I just sort of exist, and I just do. I'm so focused on what I'm doing that I don't really think about how I was before and how I'm different now. I just do the things that I do. So I'm sure if I really sat down and go, oh yeah, I used to be like this and I don't do that anymore, I could figure it out. But I don't ever think about
I get that.
how things have changed me. I just go on doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I try to be the best I can be in the moment.
Right, absolutely. And this is a very exciting chapter right now. I mean, of course, it's a pivotal chapter. It's also amazing, like with the band, the Sum 41, you know, their final album, and to have Landmines, you know, it's just like, talk about going out on a high, you know? I mean, how does that feel that this is the perfect closure of this first, you know, this important part of your life, which has been your entire life up until this point?
Yeah, I mean, everything has been so great this year, and so unexpected, because we've had so many ups and downs, and a lot of downs, and you just never know what things are going to do. You know, we put out music that I felt really strongly about, but it doesn't do what I want it to do, or, you know, what you would hope. And sometimes things just really work. Like, and you don't do anything different. You know, you still put the same effort in.
Yeah.
So what I've come to realize, and the way I operate, is, you know, all I can do is I can only control my output. I can't control the outcome.
Right.
You know, so I just do the best I can in every situation, and we'll see what happens. Now this, with Landmines being our biggest single we've ever had, and the success of the album and all this kind of stuff, I mean, it was such a huge surprise. I knew I liked the song. I remember when I wrote the song, I came out of my studio and I saw Ari right away, and I go, I think I just wrote a hit song. And she was like, what? What do you mean? Just, I've never heard you say that. I go, it's a hit song, but not for Sum 41. And she was like, well, what does that mean? I go, I think it's a hit song if so-and-so put the song out, but I don't think radio's going to play Sum 41. They just don't play our new music anymore. It's like, that's long gone. They play some of our old stuff, but we haven't had a new song accepted in a long time. So I think it's a hit song, won't be for Sum 41. And sure enough, it just slowly kind of crept up. But then once it really got going, it just kind of went.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of my favorite songs to date, you know, and I've been a fan from the beginning, obviously.
Oh, cool.
Well, you know, I love this album too. Love this album. What do you hope what will be the legacy for Sum 41? What do you hope that it is?
Again, I don't hope for anything.
Yeah.
That's part of the outcome stuff that I don't think about. I only think about what I can control, and that's what I can put out there.
Yeah.
Everything else is up to everybody else.
That's a great outlook that we can all, you know, take part in, because it's like you can only control.
It's just focus on the controllables. I found that, like, you can really, I mean, you want to try to like game the system somehow to like get what you want out of everything, but you just can't.
Right.
All you can do is just do the best, and you see where it goes.
Also, part of it has to do with letting go, you know, only letting go of all that stuff.
You have to accept that it may not do what you want, and that's hard. And I've had I've had so many downs, especially in my 20s, when things didn't work, and I focused so hard on that and just wouldn't let it go.
Yeah.
And kept me up for nights, and for years. It took me years and years and years. Like, when we put out our record Underclass Hero in 2007, that was the first time we didn't have success. I thought about that failure, I'm going to say, for 12 years, almost every single day. I couldn't shake it until I got to a point, I'm like, I got to get over this. And with all this stuff with meditation and things like that, and where I said I started like working on myself in all the ways, not just like working out physically, I started to realize like how silly that was and how easy it was to let all that stuff go.
Yeah. It's so empowering, you know, when you let go of that. What makes you the most proud, you know, looking back? Because you're really at this turning point in your life now, where it's not only the close of a chapter, I mean, it's really the beginning of the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So what makes you the most proud?
Being able to write our own story and to, I'm very much, if you haven't noticed, I'm like very much in the present. So the present moment is like my proudest moment.
That is a gift.
I'm sure, I could go back and say, there's lots of stuff I'm proud about, but I'm really proud of where we're at right now. I mean, last night we played LA, and it was such a great show, and it was so fun. The crowd was amazing. I don't mean it was a great show because we were so great. I actually felt like when I came off stage, it's almost like the MTV 20th. I thought it was a bad show for myself. But the reaction from everybody was so great. So, you know, it's just, today is my most proudest moment.
What's next? Have you thought about it? Or you're just going to be in the moment and you're here right now. Be
Yeah,
here now.
because I want to focus on the final tour. And I
Yes.
want to do, I make sure like every night is the best show that I could possibly do. I'm not really thinking about what's going to happen. On February 1st, I'll be officially unemployed. And that's when I'll figure out what I'm going to do.
That's unbelievable. I just want to congratulate you again. Like, it's not enough time for me because I'm wowed by this book. I'm wowed with your courage and your bravery of sharing your story. I hope it inspires other people to dig deep and share their stories, because you must feel so cathartic. You probably feel lighter.
It does. It really does. And I didn't know it was going to be, when I first started writing this stuff and started going down the stuff with Greig Nori and thinking, this is embarrassing and kind of shameful. And I, again, start going through things like, this is all my own fault. That's all everyone's going to say. Everyone's going to like tear me apart saying, well, it's your own fault. Like, you went down that path yourself, blah, 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 you know? And then I got to a point where I was like, you know what? I don't really care what people say anyway. What do I care about people say about my life? It's my life. I enjoyed it. You don't have to like it.
Right.
Like, seems weird to me about a review on a book. I don't know what they're going to be, but I just don't care what they're going to be. Like, tear it apart. My life has been great.
like it's actually happened. This is my story.
Yeah, like,
thank
so,
you. Good night.
I mean, I guess you
Mic
could
drop. Yeah.
You could criticize my writing ability. I mean, it's my first book, so I don't know if it's any good or not.
It's so impressive, and thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for Sum 41, you know,
Thank you.
and just thank you for being you. You really are an inspiration on many levels.
Oh, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Deryck.
Cool.
We'll be right back. Wow, that was so special. I'm so grateful that Deryck shared his time and his stories with us, and I'm so happy for him that he is at this really exciting, wonderful chapter in his life, and I can't wait to see what he does next. Thank you so much for being part of the Allison Hagendorf Show presented by Cloudwater. A huge thank you to Danny Wimmer Presents. Thank you, Arctic Zone, for our guest gift bags. And most importantly, thank you. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd be honored if you subscribe to the channel, and I would love to hear from you. So please like, comment, rate, review, whatever you're feeling, and reach out to me on socials at Allison Hagendorf. Let's connect. Let me know who I should interview next and what made you smile today. Thanks again. I'll see you next time. And remember, you're a rock star.